Welcome to the WM Reviews series preparing for total consecration to the Blessed Virgin according to the programme of St. Louis de Montfort. We're providing daily readings for this preparation inspired by St. Ignatius's spiritual exercises. If you want to join, go over to wmreview.org and subscribe to emails. And don't forget to hit like, leave a comment and subscribe here too, as this helps more people see these recordings. In this reading, we're going to meet Our Lady on the eve of the Annunciation. The Annunciation and the Incarnation are an important meditation in the spiritual exercises, so forming a clear view of Our Lady at this time is really important. This text is taken from Father Henry James Coleridge. The WM Review runs a project called Father Coleridge Reader. You can find it at fathercoleridge.org. And that website serializes the works of this great 19th century Jesuit. But while Father Coleridge is great to read, his style and language make reading him aloud a little difficult. So we've simplified things here a bit. You can find the original text in the link below. As usual, this text is intended to provide fuel and material for our meditation, the points of which you'll find at the same link. So let's get started. Mary's years of spiritual growth. Though Mary's early years might seem uneventful in the ordinary sense, they were years of the greatest spiritual activity. The immense graces she received at her Immaculate Conception were just the foundation. More graces kept pouring into her soul as the days went on, while she performed the most heroic acts of interior virtue. The Church's theologians teach that Mary had an anticipated use of her faculties of intellect and will. Why? So she could immediately cooperate with the graces given to her. Through her own incomparable faithfulness, she continually increased the grace she'd already received as God's free gift, all to prepare her for the great role in his kingdom. Each event in her life brought with it a fresh dowry of graces. Her progress was like the most splendid dawn, rapidly widening and brightening into a grand and glorious day. Her oblation of herself in the temple was a heroic act on her part, as well as an act of gratitude and faithfulness from her parents. Naturally, this brought fresh supplies of grace, which then multiplied through her own cooperation. Similarly, whenever during her childhood she offered to serve God in perpetual virginity, if such should be his will, that too confirmed all God's previous gifts to her soul and added large and magnificent treasures of an even higher kind. This is God's way. Not only does he keep giving once he's begun, unless hindered by the unfaithfulness of those receiving his gifts, but he continually rises higher and higher in the beauty of the gifts themselves. It's easy to see how Mary's life in the temple gave her opportunities to advance in virtue and grace with great strides. Her whole life became a succession of acts of religious devotion and other virtues. Another great occasion for increasing her gifts must have been her betrothal, out of obedience, to her blessed spouse Joseph, and her renewal with him of her sacred commitment to virginity. And now at last the time was at hand when this mighty process of Mary's sanctification for the role of Mother of God was completed. God had built up in her soul the immense structure of graces required to bear, so to speak, the weight of divine maternity. The approaching moment was to be distinctly the most important moment in the history of God's dealing with his creatures. It was to be the birth of the new creation, a far nobler creation than the one recounted in Scripture's opening book. Think of it this way. God can make infinite numbers of worlds more beautiful than the one Moses describes. But even God can do nothing greater than make himself his own creature and make one of his creatures his own mother. Consider this. What if the work of God in material creation had hung on one of his creatures' consent? If he'd first asked man whether he wanted to be made, or asked the whole universe whether it would exist? There's a crucial distinction between the first creation and the second. In the first, God called his creatures into existence before they could choose, consent, or refuse. But in the second and infinitely nobler work of creation, which began with the Incarnation, that creature of his who was to be the conscious and willing instrument of this ineffable work was not to become that instrument without her own action. Our minds fail before the wonders of the Incarnation's mystery. But the higher we rise in appreciating them, the more we see the fitness of the immense work of grace carried on in Mary's soul to prepare her for the moment on which so much would depend. Our chief wonder must not be that this preparation was required, but that a human will could have been made so faithful to all these graces in so short a time. In sending an angel to announce to our Blessed Lady that she'd been chosen to be the human mother of the incarnate Son, God was simply following his general rule of respect, or as the wise man puts it, reverence, towards his free creatures. This is a principle he always follows. One of our spiritual writers, Lancius, has beautifully described the extremely tender and gracious manner in which God dealt with our first parents after their fall. He gave them every opportunity for humble and honest confession and for pleading their own cause as far as it could be defended before he passed sentence on them. If God could show such consideration and gentleness toward those who had unworthily offended him, it's no wonder that when the time came to repair the evils of the fall through the Incarnation, he would treat with the utmost consideration the chosen mother who was to be the instrument for carrying out his great plan. So Mary was not to be made the mother of God against her will, or without her knowledge and free consent. There were many reasons for this, which holy writers discuss at length. And the first reason is this manner in which God deals with his creatures. He had given our Blessed Lady all the immense gifts we've already talked about a little. Now the moment had come when she would be asked, so to speak, to be what he designed her to be from all eternity. God's power and majesty is shown in sending one of the highest angels, executing his will with perfect obedience, joy, and speed. God's great wisdom is shown, moreover, in the very manner Mary is approached, for it is the exact same manner in which the fall of man was brought about by Satan's deceitful conversation with our first mother Eve. First, it is obvious that God gave Our Lady, by the method he chose for carrying out his plan for her, the most wonderful opportunities for exercising virtue, increasing her merit in his sight, and receiving fresh enlightenment from him. The whole story, short as it is, displays on her part the most marvellous virtues: humility, prudence, discretion, love of purity, faith of unparalleled beauty, obedience, and more. This great display of virtue couldn't help but give her a great opportunity to increase in merit. The fathers use the most wonderful language when they discuss simply the merit of the faith she displayed in this moment of trial. Perhaps she was already so high in her degree of merit and enlightenment that she couldn't receive any fresh enlightenment from the angel. But Saint Gabriel's words assured her that the Holy Ghost himself would come upon her. Thus, at the time of the Annunciation, she received the great source of all enlightenment himself. The way this mystery was carried out is full of instruction for us. Even in our ways of dealing with others, we can learn much from it, much about our own duties and respect towards our parents, and much also about the true position and prominence of this Blessed Mother in the kingdom of her Son, founded on his incarnation in her blessed womb. It's hardly possible to imagine that anyone who has a true understanding of the Incarnation could think it morally possible that God would have brought it about without first communicating his intention to his Blessed Mother. We will talk more about the Annunciation and Incarnation itself in due course. But for now, let's note that all God's greatest works are done in silence. But surely God never did a greater work than the work of the Incarnation, and never did he work more silently and secretly than in this. The missions of the angels are swifter than rays of light, swifter than electrical currents. The moment the command was given to Gabriel, that same moment he was in Nazareth. The angelic choirs may have known that one of their chief princes was sent on an errand of marvellous mercy, but to the rest of the universe, all was as it had been the moment before. Hell had no idea of the work about to be accomplished. The strong-armed man of whom our Lord speaks was keeping his court in what kind of peace was possible to realms such as his. At least the devil had no thought, with all his cunning, all his experience, all his knowledge of the prophecies and studies of Providence's ways, of the overthrow that was coming. In the blessed dwelling place of the saints who were awaiting their deliverance, there may have been some vague expectation, an imperceptible strengthening of hope, and an instinctive feeling of consolation and joy. Purgatory may have been stirred by a more intense longing, and the holy souls throughout the world, looking for redemption, may have felt, as it were, a wave of delight passing over their minds. The great Roman world, we are told, was at peace. But the peace of the Roman world, what did it mean? It didn't mean sin was subdued, that passion was not raging, that lust and anger and hatred and greed were not tearing men's hearts and driving them against their fellows. It didn't mean that the abominable idolatries and unspeakable wickedness of the pagan world were less rampant than ever. It didn't mean the devils weren't being worshipped on 1,000 altars through the degradation of all that was noble in human nature. It didn't mean innocence was safe from corruption or weakness protected from violence and tyranny. Where, then, over the whole wide world could God's eye rest as it rested when the original creation was finished and see that all was good? But human wickedness couldn't defeat God's faithfulness. In the cottage at Nazareth, the chosen maiden was waiting, unaware of the divine purpose, but prepared by most wonderful graces to give that blessed answer on which the world's salvation hung. The period of promises and predictions, the time of divine patience struggling with human depravity, was at an end. The fullness of time had come. That's the end of this section. Head over to wmreview.org or click the link below for the points for meditation and more about the WM Review's 33-day preparation for total consecration to the Blessed Virgin Mary, according to the method of St. Louis de Montfort. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe and leave a comment, as this helps these recordings reach more people.